Hi, and welcome to the Revive, Thrive, and Optimize podcast. I'm Billy Weiss, compounding pharmacist and health and wellness expert. As always, across the table, my good friend and co-host Janet Miller, and behind the scenes, my good friend, producer Mike.
Good morning, Magic Mike. Good morning, Billy.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. The sun's coming up. It's a beautiful day. And as usual, I've got questions for you, Billy Weiss.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So if you guys don't follow the channel, please subscribe, and you can go back. And who is Billy Weiss? We did a great podcast showing his bio, all his background, qualifications, and just everything that makes you my wellness hero. So thank you. And I've got some questions today about the very popular GL1P agonist drugs that are like Ozempic, and Mounjaro and Wegovy and Zepbound and Jardiance and all these things that we're seeing commercials. So I know that there are two main compounds, drugs. I don't know what you call them, but one would be semaglutide and the other is tirzepatide. And maybe you can just sort of cover what these are and what they do. And Are they good and are they bad?
Okay, sure. So let's just start with what they are.
Okay.
So GLP-1 agonist stands for glucagon-like peptide 1 agonist. And that is a peptide that is produced when we eat. And it tells us that we're full and we don't need as much food or we don't need more food.
That's already
right?
something our body has and our body does.
Correct.
Does some people's body do that better than others?
Well, I think that we can look from people's amount of food that they can consume. Yes, that some people have more sensitivity to these GLP-1s than others, certainly. So what the drugs do is they mimic that action, and so they tell us that we're full sooner, and they help drive down addictive behaviors.
Like being addicted to food.
Like being addicted to food. Specifically, we would think sugar is very addictive because it lights up the dopamine receptors in our brain, and so we want more and more and more. It's no different than smoking or alcohol or cocaine or cigarettes. They kind of have that same effect as far as what the dopamine receptors receive, and that tells our body, hey, we like this, we want more. So they have been found, Janet, not only to be effective at helping people lose weight, which we'll distinguish weight from fat here in a little bit and why that's important, but they have been found to be effective against other addictions such as smoking and alcohol and those kind of things. So I think
that's pretty amazing, because in the beginning I thought these GLP-1 agonists were really bad for you and that people shouldn't use them, and it was only people with no willpower, and then they were cheating and they were getting to lose weight without having to be disciplined. But now I'm hearing more and more that these can be very helpful. They can kickstart you. And most recently, I heard of a group of women in Texas who none of them need to lose weight, but they want to stop drinking alcohol and craving that sugar, and that they're being prescribed Ozempic for that addiction anyway.
Yeah, it definitely has been shown, more recent research, to help with those type of addictions. Also, it's also been shown to, these type of drugs have been shown to reduce the risk of heart disease, which makes sense, right? Because for every pound we're overweight, for every pound we're above our ideal body weight of fat, we add 250 miles of vessels that our heart and our kidneys have to pump against. So
say that again. For every pound of weight that we are overweight, our body makes 200.
We have to pump, our heart and our kidneys have to pump an extra 250 miles per pound.
So if you're overweight 10 pounds.
Yeah, 2,500 extra miles. So you can imagine the workload that is now put on the heart and the kidneys, not to mention the workload that's put on the joints, right?
Oh, wow. Didn't think about that.
When you're 10 pounds overweight. So it's kind of one of those things that puts an undue stress on the body when we're overweight. Now, muscle carries blood efficiently, so that's not the same thing. And that's why we need to distinguish when we're talking about the Zepbounds and Mounjaros and Ozempics and Wegovy's, the difference in losing weight and losing fat. There's a big difference. And, the research shows that a lot of weight loss with these drugs is muscle.
I've heard over 50% of the weight loss.
There is a study
muscle.
that says that it's 50% or more is actually muscle, which I'm going to tell you is a tragedy for people to lose weight by losing muscle.
But how do they know? You go to your doctor and you weigh, and 6 weeks later, you're 30 pounds lighter and you weigh, and the doctor's scale is not going to show you if you're losing muscle or fat.
It's not in most cases, Janet, which is why we always put these folks on an InBody 570 where we can measure muscle and fat from the beginning, and then we can repeat it to make sure they're doing it right. So I have seen tremendous success using these drugs, these GLP-1 drugs, by teaching people the OptiPlan.
Lifestyle.
And talking to them about making lifestyle changes and using these drugs as a short-term kickstart to kind of reset, reboot their insulin sensitivity. That's one of the things that these drugs, I think, are good at.
But I keep hearing that once you're on them for life.
Well, if you don't do it properly, I think that's probably the case.
Okay.
Yeah, because what happens is, you think about it, if your friend lost 30 pounds in 6 weeks and 15, we'll call it, was muscle, now if your friend goes off the drug and starts eating more food again, because they have less muscle, they're going to actually gain more fat.
Weight. Yeah.
Because 70% of our glucose disposal and our calorie burn comes from muscle mass.
Yeah.
So burning muscle is a really, really bad idea. Burning fat is an excellent idea.
So if you're taking one of these drugs and it's making you feel hungry sooner, at the same time, or feel less hungry sooner, at the same time, you should be really looking at what you're eating. So maybe if you eat Skittles all the time, it just makes you eat less Skittles versus changing the lifestyle habits and what you're eating. Then when you come off the drugs, you're going to crave more broccoli, maybe instead of craving the Skittles.
Well, I think the things that are the most important for these people is that it does change those desires, for Skittles.
Yeah.
So if we can replace that with something more quality. So the number one thing that I'm trying to teach people is, number one, you have to get in adequate protein.
Okay.
They have to get in enough protein. And I'm going to tell you, even people who are trying, typically are woefully short on their protein amounts. So we got to get them enough protein, because the body will not be able to maintain or build muscle without adequate protein. And we are very deficient in protein in America.
And adequate protein, it's got to be the right type of protein.
It does. I mean, just if you really want to maintain and build muscle, it's animal protein.
Okay.
It's not. I know people will argue with me and say, well, broccoli has protein. Yes, but it's not a complete essential amino acid protein to maintain muscle.
Okay.
It does other things that are very beneficial for us, but it's not a muscle building type of protein. So animal protein is what I'm talking about. So that's the number one thing that I'm trying to get these people to understand. And the number two thing is they need to be hormonally optimized.
Yeah.
And they need to have the right nutritional supplements. Okay. So you think about it now, they're eating less, which can be very good, especially if they're eating the wrong things. So they're not getting as much protein probably as they were. They're not getting as many vitamins and minerals in as they were. And their hormones are, as we've talked about on other podcasts, just completely shot. So the body's not efficient at holding on to muscle. The body's not efficient at burning fat. The body's not efficient at using insulin and sugar. So if we can put those things together, we're having people that are burning massive amounts of fat and while maintaining or gaining muscle at the same time, which the medical community would say is impossible to burn fat and gain muscle at the same time. Well, I'm going to tell you it's absolutely not. And we have people that are 70s and 80s doing it. And we have people much younger doing it even faster. But we have people literally in their 70s that are burning fat and gaining muscle at the very same time.
So you have clients that are taking GLP-1 agonist, and you're tracking their success. You're tracking their dosage, I guess, and you're tracking their muscle, fat burning, all that.
Yeah, and Janet,
how long do they?
We're trying to get them to use it for no more than 12 weeks.
Okay,
at the
that
low
was my
dose.
question.
Even a lot of times we will call it a microdose, not even using the doses that are recommended as the pharmaceutical companies call the low dose. We're using even lower doses and having tremendous success because we're teaching them the lifestyle changes. So some of these people are going to be on these drugs forever because they're not making any changes. They come off, they're going to be fatter than they've ever been. They're going to weigh more than they've ever weighed.
Because they're not making the lifestyle changes.
And
they're
so
losing
now they're on
muscle.
15 milligrams of Mounjaro for the rest of their life, which I don't think is a healthy way to do it.
And kids, and they're putting kids on it.
Well, they're approved for kids 12 and above now, and they're working on 6 and above, which I think is really probably not the right thing for a child. They just need better habits, which is on the parents, better food choices. Yeah. But for adults, I do think that these can be miracle jump starts and kick starts when done properly. I think it can be a tragedy when done improperly, and the doctor hadn't talked to them about protein, hadn't talked to them about movement, hadn't talked to them about supplements, hadn't talked to them about hormones. It's more just a crutch at that point, right?
Right.
Let's just, the easy button. Let's mash the easy button and let's don't really fix
I'm kind of jealous of that. But yeah, it's like putting it all together, using this, microdosing it to help you kickstart your lifestyle changes. Yeah. And then they go hand in hand, and then possibly when you go off the drug, your lifestyle changes have become habit and they've kicked in, and then you can maintain. And I also know there's a difference between Ozempic, which is semaglutide, and I think Mounjaro is the one that is tirzepatide. So those are the two different GLP-1 agonists. Semaglutide, tirzepatide, differences?
Oh, big differences. Okay. I'm going to tell everybody out there. Now, Ozempic is probably the most popular one, but semaglutide is what Ozempic is, and so is Wegovy. A lot of Wegovy commercials today I see on TV.
And you don't?
I'm not a fan of semaglutide.
Okay.
It is a GLP-1. It works down one pathway. It's a GLP-1 agonist, and that's it. And
when you say one pathway,
yeah, so it only affects the glucagon-like peptide 1. That's it. And so it's not that that's wrong. It's just that it seems to have many. I know that it has a lot more side effects than tirzepatide or Mounjaro or Zepbound.
Okay.
And I think part of it is because it only works down one pathway. So we see much more nausea. We see many more people having a diarrhea.
That's what I was hearing. They can't empty their stomach or their...
So we see that more routinely with semaglutide. I'll be honest with you, with tirzepatide, I've never seen it. And tirzepatide is a dual agonist. So it works along not only the GLP-1 or glucagon-like 1 peptide pathway, it also acts on the GIP pathway, which is glucose-dependent insulinotropic peptide. So here's why I think tirzepatide is superior. It's working more to help the insulin response be more efficient.
And that's what we really want.
And we know that insulin is the most important hormone we can measure, right? So if we can take this drug that does both, and now it's working along the insulin pathway, number one, we've seen that it's more effective, in helping people burn fat. Number two, I think that it helps them maintain muscle easier.
Okay.
And number three, we just don't see any side effects. We don't see the nausea. We don't see the stomach upset. We don't see the trouble going to the restroom. Just don't see it.
So I'm going to my doctor, and let's just say I want to ask for help losing weight. And is there a certain amount of overweight that you need to be? Like, does someone have to be 35 pounds overweight to get on one of these drugs? And then if I'm going to ask my doctor about it, how do I say I want tirzepatide and not semaglutide? And does insurance pay for it? And how I keep hearing these things are so expensive that only designer, people can afford them.
Yeah, they are expensive drugs for sure. I mean, they're between $1,200 and $1,500 a month.
And does insurance pay for any of that?
In most cases, no. There are some. I mean, if you're a type 2 diabetic, some insurances will cover Ozempic, and some insurances will cover Mounjaro. And then for the weight loss, the same drugs, but under one is called Wegovy, and the tirzepatide is called Zepbound. Zepbound. Now, those are typically not covered, again, by most insurances. So the majority of people that we certainly see here it's probably about 50-50 that are covered on insurance and 50% that are not
But
covered on insurance.
you need a prescription for any of it.
You do. You need. They are
So
prescription
you got to go to your
drugs.
doctor.
Correct.
You got to get a prescription.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they are prescription drugs that we're talking about here. So there was a time where compounding pharmacists could compound these drugs. That time has pretty much gone away. The FDA has kind of cut that out because the drugs were in shortage at one time. There were so many people trying to get the Ozempics and the Wegovy's and those things that they just couldn't supply it fast enough. But now that shortage is over, and so now that the shortage is over, the compounding pharmacies are really not supposed to be compounding these drugs anymore at this point.
Is that because you kind of compete with the pharmaceutical companies?
Yeah, the pharmaceutical company has a patent on these drugs. So when there's enough supply, they're not supposed to be compounding them there.
It seems like you can go online, and I don't know if you do a video conference or you talk to a doctor online, but I think you can just go online and get these things now. And I just saw where Costco, like their biggest selling product at Costco right now is Ozempic. So how are they getting that there?
Well, they can do this telemedicine thing where they can meet with you and do their due diligence and prescribe it. I mean, it's certainly legal today to do that. So yeah, anybody has access to them. It's just, will your insurance pay for it? Can you afford it? Are you willing to make the right changes, to take the right supplements, get in the right protein, balance your hormones? Because Janet, I'm going to tell you, I mean, I have a couple right now, and I've talked about them before, but between the two of them in about, it's probably 16 or 20 weeks now, but they've lost a total, between the two of them, about 60 pounds of fat, husband and wife, and they've gained muscle.
That's amazing.
And so
they're changing their lifestyle.
But when they came in to talk to Beth and I, they said, tell us what to do. We'll do whatever you say. They weren't worried about how much money the supplements were going to cost. They weren't worried about how much the peptides cost. And not everybody has that luxury. I'm just saying this couple, they went out and built a home gym for themselves. We talked to them about that. They got an infrared sauna after we talked. So, but they, in the last 20 weeks, I mean, they've had to buy all new clothes because they can't, I mean, even the wife's shoes won't fit anymore. Wow. Because she's even lost fat in her feet. So it's pretty amazing what these drugs can do. And now that they've been, I'll call it reset, they're not on the drugs.
When you say reset, you mean their insulin?
I think they've reset their insulin. I think they've reset their cravings. Yeah. Their addictions. We'll call it food addictions. Yeah. I know that the husband completely gave up alcohol. Now, he didn't drink a lot of alcohol, but on the weekends he would drink maybe 6 beers. He's completely cut all that out, and I suspect that the GLP-1 helped that.
And people losing weight, it reduces their risk of cancer, heart disease, and all that. But one thing people forget about is that isn't alcohol a class 1 carcinogen just as dangerous as cigarettes? Well,
alcohol is in my opinion, very dangerous. Destroys the liver, depletes glutathione, increases cancer rates tremendously, destroys sleep. So yes.
So using it to get even off alcohol would be beneficial.
Oh, it'd be very beneficial. Yeah. So what I want to point out about this couple is they were only on the tirzepatide for 12 weeks.
Okay, so 3 months.
The last 8 weeks, they have not been on tirzepatide. They continue to burn fat and build muscle.
Awesome.
Because they've made the necessary changes.
That's great.
So it was a 12-week, I'll call it reset. And they went fully committed. And they'll never, in my opinion, unless they just go haywire, they'll never need the drug again.
And because they've built more muscle or maintained their muscle, they're going to now burn calories faster. They're going to burn more fat, all that.
Absolutely. Okay. They're going to burn more.
And they feel better, and their joints feel better to help them work out when you lose weight.
Well, and one of the things that they've noticed and they've told me, and I mean, they're not the only ones. I use them because they're the most recent example of really success doing it together. I love it when the husband and wife do it together. But, he used to eat breakfast every single morning. I mean, like he was going to get up and eat breakfast every morning, no matter what. And now that he's broken that habit and he was on the GLP-1 for 12 weeks, he told me, he said, man, I hadn't even thought about eating before noon in so long. So he gets his intermittent fast every day.
That's great.
And that hasn't come back, and it won't. Once he resets that, right, he's got a new habit, he's got a new pattern. So that's the way I think these things should be used, and I think they can be absolute miracles for people.
Are they peptides? They
are peptides.
Okay.
They're mimicking the natural body's natural peptides. GLP-1 is glucagon-like peptide 1.
Okay.
So and GIP is glucagon-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide. So yes, they are peptides.
Because I know that I was able to get my doctor to prescribe peptides to help me lose fat. And very expensive, but I only had to do a few rounds. And they were peptides that helped me to maintain muscle, burn fat.
I think you're talking more about a growth hormone.
Yeah.
So it helps the body release more of your natural
stimulator, right? Growth hormone stimulators.
Yeah.
So, that plus taking your compounded L-carnitine, which I was taking a ton of those, but I think that helped me burn fat.
Well, L-carnitine definitely, and that's one of the things this couple's doing too, by the way. They're doing a ton of my supplements. But L-carnitine does signal the body to shuttle fat for fuel.
Okay.
So it does help us burn more fat. L-carnitine is tremendous for the brain. L-carnitine is tremendous for the heart. And then it helps the body burn more fat. So yeah, I take a lot of L-carnitine every day myself. And L-carnitine is an amino acid, right? So
you're getting.
So we're talking about amino acids, proteins. We got to get enough. We got to get enough. We got to get enough. It will be a failure if they don't.
It sounds like the conversation is changing with these GLP-1 agonists, that they're finding ways to use them that are safer, maybe more effective, maybe less expensive. And I did hear on a podcast yesterday that they believe that they're more effective than bariatric surgery, and I would think probably safer.
Well, I would think that anything is probably better and safer than bariatric surgery, because it's really just a matter of making lifestyle changes.
Okay.
I just think, Duke University has a whole department for complications from bariatric surgery.
Wow.
So that should ring a bell with people before they do this.
Yeah.
I don't even necessarily think that everyone needs a GLP-1 that is overweight. They can just make the changes. We did it long before, been doing it for 35 years, long before GLP-1s were available. But I do think that it can definitely speed the process and make it easier for people who just have, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but some people don't have the same willpower to cut out the Skittles as other people. So I think they can really be a miracle and kickstart that. But I think that, Janet, the problem is, I think that 98 or 99% of the people doing it are doing it wrong. They're just using the drug as a crutch. They're not getting in their protein. They're burning muscle. They don't even know it. They're losing weight, so they're happy. And that's the tragedy of it. I don't want to see that. I want to see the positive side, where they're burning muscle, burning fat, gaining muscle, or maintaining muscle, or minimizing muscle loss at the very least. And that's where we'll have long-term success without having to inject the drug for more than, 12 to 16, 20 weeks. Certainly should be plenty.
So if someone's doctor or someone goes to their doctor and they want to get on a weight loss drug, I would recommend them talk to you first and get an in-body to find out how much fat and how much muscle you have. And then you would say second to try to get tirzepatide instead of semaglutide.
Well, I would say get on the right supplement regimen first.
Yeah.
Then try to get tirzepatide versus semaglutide.
Make sure you're working out and lifting weights.
Your hormones.
And balance your hormones.
You can't build muscle without adequate protein. Going to be very, very difficult to build muscle and burn fat without optimal testosterone, estradiol, progesterone as a woman. I mean, DHEA. I mean, there's so many different factors in this that what I'm afraid of, again, is, and I hate to use this example, but I think that's what these drugs are being used for, is the easy button. Easy to lose weight, but we're really not improving our habits, our health, our muscle, we're burning it off. So that's where I think that the vast majority of people that are using these drugs. There are people, I have, again, hundreds, if not thousands, who've done it the right way. They're not using the drug long term. They're gaining muscle. They're burning fat. They feel great. They look great. And they're definitely less at risk for all the major diseases we see today in America.
I'm changing my mind about it. And I know for so many women that say want to come take my yoga class, they'll say, I'll be there in 3 months because I need to lose some weight first before I join a group class. Like I don't want to look at myself in the mirror. I don't want to. And so maybe they kickstart some weight loss and then that gets them to the gym. They feel more confident. Their joints feel better. And that starts that lifestyle change. So I think working together with their doctor, working together with someone like you who could help with lifestyle, taking the right supplements, understanding how important keeping your muscle is, knowing your visceral fat, I guess all that can work together as a great symphony with the hormones.
I think it can be an absolute, again, miracle for people and one of the greatest kickstarts and maybe one of the greatest advancements ever when done properly. When done improperly, I think it can be one of the biggest mistakes that people make.
Well,
I think it's just a matter of doing it right and having somebody that is educating them on how to do it right and not somebody who just hands them a prescription and says, here, go get this filled. They go to the average pharmacist who says, here, take this, and here's how you do it. You inject it once a week. And nobody gives them any education on anything.
Yeah, education. Again, your class is amazing. And there's an annual wellness weekend, which is coming up January 4th and 5th to 2025. This podcast might happen after that.
Right.
Come out after that.
Sure.
But yeah.
Well, and Janet, the really other news in GLP-1 world is there are newer, even better in so far the phase 3 clinical trials is one called retatrutide. And I believe it's Eli Lilly. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's Eli Lilly. Retatrutide is a triple pathway agonist.
Okay.
So it works down the GLP-1, the GIP-1, or the GIP, and then it works down glucagon pathway. So they're finding that it helps burn more fat and makes it even easier for the body not to burn off the muscle.
Wow.
So I think there's some advancements that will be even better than tirzepatide, but for now, the one that is available commercially, tirzepatide is far superior to semaglutide, and really they cost the same. I don't know why anybody personally would use semaglutide when they can get tirzepatide. The cost is so close.
And the tirzepatide pharmaceutical name is Mounjaro?
For type 2 diabetes, Mounjaro. For weight loss, Zepbound.
Zepbound. And so if you're type 2 diabetic, they're going to prescribe Mounjaro. And if you just need to lose weight, they're going to prescribe Zepbound.
Yeah, that's up to the doctor to make the diagnosis and decide which path they need to go.
But that's the CEO of your own health. And
that's what they're approved for.
Okay.
But drugs are used off-label all the time. So it doesn't mean they can't. The doctor certainly has the right to prescribe them for other issues.
Now, if you're getting this stuff online, how do you know you're getting?
You don't, Janet.
You don't. Okay.
You really don't. There are so many fakes on peptides and peptide bioregulators out there that it's hard to know. It's not a good answer.
Go the safe route.
Know. Yeah, I think your best bet is to make sure you're dealing with somebody that's legitimate and you know what you're getting, especially when you're injecting something. And I hope people learned from the latest viral thing. We need to be really careful before we inject stuff, right? I think we need to be really careful before we put anything in us or on us. But certainly injections, let's make sure we're getting what we think we're getting and we're getting something that we actually need.
Okay, wait, that's one other thing too. So tirzepatide and semaglutide, they're not a pill. They're a syringe that you inject, or you go to the doctor, or you do it yourself, or how does
Most people are doing it themselves.
Okay.
It's pretty painless. It's the smallest insulin needle. They're what we'll call auto injectors, so they're easy to do. It's kind of
like an EpiPen kind of.
Yeah, you don't have to think a lot to do it. So most people can do it themselves. Now, semaglutide does come in a tablet form also, but it's not nearly as effective as the shots. And again, we get a lot of side effects with that.
Okay.
So,
all right, cool.
Yep.
Well, I learned a lot.
Yep, good. Thank you. Great questions. A big topic today.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. See ya.